Okay, hopefully I've cleared enough memory from this phone that I can get through this all the way. Since it doesn't seem like people mind too badly the longer duration videos, this is probably going to be a little bit on the long side. The backstory as to how this came about, I had to take notes before I actually forgotten how this all transpired. So anyways, the real beginning of this was a few months ago when I had actually joined YouTube, the Facebook YouTube Machinist group. So right off the bat, I had made a plea that if anybody ever stumbled across one of these things for sale or auction or whatever, to pretty much get in touch with me. Much to my amazement, somebody actually remembered either that one, making that plea, or from one of the other sites that I had made that plea about, and got in touch with me through Facebook Messenger. So we'll just call him Mr. F, because I don't know if excuse me, I don't know if he would want his name to be used or not. So anyways, Tuesday night the 7th, around 8:37 p.m., apparently I had gotten a Facebook message from Mr. F with a link to an auction in a suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So not only was it listed someplace I wasn't even looking for, it was also, they had the spelling of the brand name of this thing incorrectly. So there wasn't a prayer of me doing any kind of search and finding this. I didn't notice the actual message until about 9:53 yet that evening. So essentially at about 10 o'clock, I found out what was going on with this. So I immediately, thanked him and started to research, is this really a legitimate machine, or did somebody go and take the base and put another Bridgeport head on it? Had to find pictures to confirm that this was legit before I started to put together a trip to drive 600 miles one way in a matter of, a day and a half? So after confirming it, it only took a few minutes to find the auction company and find the actual auction in question and root through some of the pictures and see my baby. So immediately after that, I got a hold of my buddy next door and asked him if I could use the trailer for a trip tomorrow. Tomorrow back, Tuesday the 7th. And of course he was kind enough to allow me to do so. So about 11 o'clock in the evening, I went over and actually got the trailer, started to get packed, everything imaginable that I could on the trailer, on the truck, in the truck. I'm sure some of you guys have seen the video the one morning where I showed some of the stuff that I had in the truck for as many contingencies as I could think of. The only contingency I really didn't plan for was crappy weather. So one of the days when it was actually time to come load this, it was pouring down rain. This was my raincoat. luckily the homeowner, I think I think he actually had to empty trash out of it, but it was raining so bad I didn't care. Okay, so anyways, packing. I was packing and packing and packing till about 3 o'clock in the morning. Still hadn't had everything packed at that point. I still needed to throw in clothing and snacks and water and whatnot. But I mean, I had everything packed but the kitchen sink. Considering the fact that we have the coronavirus thing going on, I even took a bucket and toilet paper because I had no idea what it was going to be like. I literally have barely left the house since this whole pandemic has started. So anyways, that in itself was kind of a three-ring circus. But back to the story here. So about 5 a.m., I guess technically 5 a.m. on Wednesday the 8th, I wake up, or I don't even think I actually had slept at that point. So I go ahead and get out of bed and start putting in the last few things into the truck, the electronics and whatnot, so that I have some connectivity while I'm out on the road. And 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm actually hitting the road. Got some gas. Yeah, if I remember right, I wound up getting a little bit of gas. So, basically, at this point, it's just 12 hours of boring driving. Nothing real exciting going on, other than I started to recognize about 200, 300 miles into the trip, I start to recognize that the truck is having problems staying cool. So this is the first time that I've done a long hauling project with this particular pickup truck. So, at any rate, so I start kind of fighting with that in the process, but don't really know just exactly how bad it is just yet. So about 6 o'clock in the evening, Wednesday the 8th, I'm about 100 miles away from Philadelphia, and absolutely, beat at this point because I've been pretty well nocturnal since it's summer, trying to avoid the heat. Since I can do stuff out in the garage, it works out well. So I decide to stop at Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And, well, let's just say the redneck center of the universe just happens to be right there. They were having some sort of Mopar Nationals or whatever, so there was just Dodge people, Dodge cars, Dodge trucks all over the place. Not that I'm complaining about that. That was definitely cool. But you can imagine the mentality of some of the individuals. Luckily, everybody was pretty decent. Everybody was pretty chill. So, no problems getting a decent night of sleep. Wake up the next morning, Thursday the 9th, and start looking into whether or not I can replace the thermostat right there at the motel, since I was in a nice gravel area where if I made a mess on the ground from antifreeze, it wasn't going to be a big issue. So there again, those who have already seen the video on that knows that didn't work out very well, and it still isn't changed. So around here, not hauling a load, thermostat's not likely to be an issue. But at any rate, I do also wind up trying to do a little bit of research on towing companies and whatnot. And the phone that I had during the trip is kind of a dinosaur. So one of the other things I try to do is I try to look ahead as far as parking, where am I going to park my vehicle, because a pickup truck and a trailer in a major city is not exactly a picnic by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm researching all that. I'm taking screenshots from my tablet, transferring them over to my dinosaur smartphone, and just getting as generally as prepared as I possibly can. The one positive thing would have been if I could have done the thermostat there. There was an AutoZone and an Advanced Auto Parts that I could have walked to within 45 minutes. But that simply was not to be. So, I guess it's about 10 o'clock in the morning at that point. Oh, excuse me. About 8 o'clock in the morning at that point, I abandon that idea and just start hitting the road towards Philadelphia. Uneventful drive from there. Still, early in the morning, cool temperatures, so I don't have to worry about the truck overheating at that point. Arrive in Philadelphia about 10 o'clock in the morning. I noticed in my research that there was a Home Depot that was almost immediately available right after popping off of the toll road. So I plan on stopping there and pretty much getting my bearings, getting some rest, a little more rest, going into the Home Depot, bathroom break, finding food, etc., etc. So I chilled out for a little while at that point and then decided to drive out to the auction site so that I could kind of familiarize myself with the area a little bit. So, trying to avoid surprises when hauling a pickup truck and a trailer there again around a metropolitan area. So the place that I decided to go ahead and park was a elementary school that wasn't far from, I could walk there in like 3 minutes or so, and worked out like a champ. So I wind up going out and then back to Home Depot for a little while so that I didn't risk getting towed from the school parking lot, because God only knows how the mentality of some of the people in some of these major cities. I've been towed for lesser things, let's just say that. So anyways, finally getting close to auction inspection time. I think they opened it up for around 1 o'clock. So I got to my parking spot at about 12:30 and started slowly wandering over to the auction site to see if I could get, kind of an early bird look at the auction material. Well, an early look at this. And sure enough, they were cool about everything. So, it's getting hotter, it's getting hotter, it's getting hotter. And the auction starts at about 2 o'clock. So, the auction starts at 2. The machinery isn't going to be auctioned off until 4 o'clock. So, I mill around for a little while at the auction site, and then, most of the people are wearing masks, so I'm okay with that. I had my fancy John Deere mask on, but, why stand around with a group of people in a close area if you don't have to? So, found me a nice spot to sit on a bucket outside and just kind of chill until 4 o'clock machinery auctioning starts. So 4 o'clock comes around and they start to get into the outdoor stuff. Start auctioning off tools, etc., etc. So then I kind of sneak my way into the garage and just pretty much park myself right beside this because I don't want to miss a thing. This, obviously, I desperately wanted to get, but there was a couple of other things. So by the time it actually got around to auctioning this off, and I think I'm going to double check the phone and make sure that it's still actually recording. Yes, all good. So by the time it actually gets around to this guy, there's like me, one other guy that's seriously interested in machinery, which we'll call him Mr. P. And I think somebody had put in a bid for this machine, a very, very low bid, and then an absentee bid, I guess is the way to say it. And I mean, not that it really mattered to me. I was prepared to pay a pretty stupid price for the thing. But got to this, $275 was the gavel price, and 15% buyer's premium or whatever. As you can imagine, I'm smiling ear to ear at that point. So finish out the auction, I buy a few more things, and about somewhere between 5, 6 o'clock or so, Mr. P and I are the last two people there, just kind of going through. He bought a lathe, I bought this, so we kind of made a pact to try and assist each other with loading, but pretty much there was no loading this without, heavy machinery, which we'll get to that in a moment. But anyways, we do as much loading as we can. I help him he bought a really cool old trailer, and I help him get his lathe loaded up. Actually, I got the base of the lathe from him, and help him get his tires aired up on his trailer and whatnot. And we sit down, we're talking for a few minutes, kind of bonding, and he suggests we go to dinner. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I'm really up for going into a restaurant. And then he said, oh, Red Robin has an outdoor dining area. And I'm like, deal, let's go do it. Because at that point, I was absolutely starved. I mean, living on nuts and Pop-Tarts. Oh, I guess I did actually have, I was able to get through one of the McDonald's drive-thrus that particular morning, so I really pigged out on sausage McMuffins. But that was the last serious thing I had eaten until 8 o'clock having dinner with Mr. P at Red Robin. So, I mean, we talked and talked and talked and talked. It probably wasn't until about 10 o'clock that I found a hotel close by, because I still wasn't able to get this loaded up yet. So, I made arrangements with the homeowner, which we'll call Mr. L. Oh, and I knew I wouldn't be able to get this perfectly in order. One of the most amazing things about actually being able to buy this machine is I got the chance to chit-chat with the owner. I don't know about you guys, but for me, the opportunity to actually talk to the person who got to use the machine is worth its weight in gold. So he was into building model trains. I don't know what scale, but some of the really cool stuff that you see on YouTube, something along that line. It looked like they were pretty good sized things. Some of the wheels that he had laying on the ground in his garage were almost as big as this. So, I mean, it was a good size scale model trains. And that just, I mean, that absolutely made my day right there. So, anyways, at the hotel, 10 o'clock in the evening, again, so tired, you can't even imagine. So, Friday the 10th, my phone starts messing up left and right. My phone doesn't want to stay running on the first battery, so I put the second battery in, and it's running at this point. It continues to function, but it has no idea what time it is. It doesn't know what day it is. Luckily, it stays functioning. If I remember right, at this point, there's no place. There wasn't any place. Oh, yes, there was. There was a place I could get. I was able to get breakfast there again. So, no worries. I had a meal that day. Finally got the brilliant idea after one of the other YouTubers had suggested I didn't need a rotator for this thing, split boom. George, can't remember his last name again. But anyway, so I got a hold of Rob's Towing at the behest of Mr. P. And the lady that I spoke to on the phone from their dispatch, she was awesome. I mean, she knew exactly what to do. She gave me the email address, had me send some pictures on it, as much information as I had available. She got a hold of her supervisor or her people, and she must have been back in touch with me within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something really reasonable with a quote of $375. I was like, oh my God. I mean, talk about, that made my day. I was expecting some horrifying quote of $1,000, $2,000, to bring one of these big machines out there to tow, haul this little itty bitty thing. So I was like, immediately I jumped on it and had suggested 1 p.m. Tentatively to actually do the deed. So, no more than really get off the phone with her, and it starts to pour down rain. Well, this is the one thing I'm not really prepared for. So, I know it's going to be a difficult day because of the rain, so I start making whatever preparations I can to my trailer and my truck in anticipation of actually getting this. 11 o'clock, I get a hold of Mr. L and make arrangements to get back out there and start rolling this thing the rest of the way out of the garage. So I was kind of struggling a little bit with the rollers because at this point there's a couple of flaws on the bottom of the casting, and I didn't know exactly how to compensate for them until just a couple of days ago. So anyways, I barely got the thing out of the garage. I parked my truck in his driveway, put a come along on it, and just kept working the rollers. And keep in mind, it's pouring down rain. Luckily, it's not as bad as the rain's about to get, but it's bad enough. Anyways, I finally get it all the way out, or just enough of the way all the way out that a wrecker can get a hold of this thing. Has the vertical clearance to get a hold of the thing, and it's probably about 12:30 at that point, and it's still raining. Luckily, I had the wherewithal to bring some plastic to put over this thing, so I covered it up as best as I could while I'm waiting for the tow truck, and it just starts pouring. I mean, sheets of rain. I'm sitting in my truck at this point, just kind of like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. Now, I don't know if it was planned or if it was just darn luck. About 2:30, the rain stops, and I mean stops completely. So I take that opportunity to get one last item loaded up on the trailer and make final preparations for the tow truck to come out, which I'm anticipating could be any moment from the last conversation I had had with the dispatch. So anyways, I'm set. 3 o'clock, he shows up. The tow truck driver shows up. And we're talking one of these enormous big rig wreckers. The thing, I can't even, the guy stated the weight of the machine, but I can't recall. Heavy. Very, very, very heavy. Well, Mr. L was rightfully worried about damage to his driveway from this machine. So there was some difficulty in that regard, but we finally, the tow truck driver finally assured him that it'll be okay. I just need to, back into the driveway a little bit further. His boom could only go out about 8 or 10 foot or so. So he wound up having to get closer than the homeowner would have preferred, but looks like it went off without a hitch. With the exception of the fact that there was an awful lot of debate as far as how to rig this machine up. Luckily, there again, the tow truck driver, seasoned guy, very sharp, knew what he was doing, was very cautious, worked like a champ. We got it rigged right around here, basically exactly the same spot that I rigged it up here on my property with, and no problems. We got it off the ground, just a few feet, and I'm very cautiously walking it forward as he's very cautiously rolling out of the driveway with this big truck. And there again, Mr. L's a little anxious, maybe a lot anxious, but I think I can understand that. I mean, I know how attached I am to this machine. I can only assume he also was very attached to the machine, and the last thing he wanted to see was this 2,500 pound plus machine plummet and crack into 2 or 3 pieces. So totally understandable. About 3:30 at this point, 3:30, I finally get my trailer backed underneath of this and very gently drop this thing down exactly where I wanted to position. I mean, to the millimeter. That's how good this operator was. So I'm telling you guys, if you ever need a tow in the Philadelphia area, Rob's Towing, they were awesome to me. Anyways, so I start to commence with strapping this thing down. And there again, much debate with the homeowner, Mr. L, as to how to do this safely. And I try to assure him this thing is not coming off the trailer. Wherever the trailer goes, this goes. Wherever this goes, the trailer goes. It's one thing I don't mess around with when hauling objects is they get the shit strapped out of them. They do not come off my trailer or my truck. So literally after about an hour's worth of strapping this thing down, it's strapped down. And it starts to starts sprinkling a little bit more heavily, but at this point I am most of the way through the strapping process. So then I finally take my piece of plastic, cover it up the rest of the way. The machine has already been dampened at that point, so I knew flash rust was going to happen no matter what. So I thought about getting another tarp to cover it over more thoroughly, but it's like I knew it was going to happen, so there was no point. It was just going to be another hour's worth of securing the tarp. So I passed on that. I went and stopped at Home Depot thinking I would get a tarp. Decided to just go to the bathroom and hit the road because it's just raining harder and harder at this point anyways. And I've got a lot of travel to go. So at any rate, about 5 o'clock on Friday the 10th, I finally get back on the toll road and start heading back west again. Raining pretty aggressively at this point. Sometimes difficult to see, etc., but it's kind of irrelevant because I'm not traveling 70 miles an hour at this point anyways, because don't trust my brakes, don't trust the trailer, don't trust other drivers, you know, yada yada yada. So one of the more interesting things happens a little bit later down the road. About 6:30, 7 o'clock, the rain starts to let up, and I find an opportunity to pull off the road, excuse me, and hit a rest area, or travel plaza, I guess they're on the toll road. And at this point, I got the opportunity. I'm sitting there in my truck, you know, just kind of resting, and this individual walks up to my truck window and starts talking to me, and I'm like, so it just happens to be someone saw this machine and had some sort of machinist background, I believe, many, many years ago from the sounds of things. But we'll call him Mr. M. So, great guy, super, super nice. And so I like, give me a minute, I'll hop out and we'll talk about this. So it must have been, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. His family was waiting for him up by the rest area, and we're just talking. We're just walking around the trailer. I'm pointing things out to him. I think at first he just assumed that this was just a Bridgeport mill, you know, just a normal everyday milling machine. So I started trying to explain to him, and unfortunately it's covered in plastic at this point, so he can't see the unique features of this particular machine. But even at that, he's just as excited could be. I mean, almost as excited as I am about the whole machine anyways. So I gave him, one of my business cards so that he could, you know, look it up on YouTube, get my email address and whatnot, and keep touch with me. And after a few minutes, you know, we go our separate ways. Come to find out, a day later or so, he'd actually had the opportunity to take a picture of me going down the road with this thing on the trailer, which I've got that on my tablet. I'm kind of excited to see that too, but great guy. Hell of a lot of fun to talk to. So, okay, about 10 o'clock in the evening, I'm God only knows where, in the middle of Pennsylvania. Actually, I think it was around about Bedford, Pennsylvania. Hard as hell to see. The rain had let up, luckily, but the temperatures were, the road surface was warm enough that it was steaming up, and it was hilly country,